Next Door Battle Stations! This was my favorite show growing up, and the anniversary of the show was just recently. It was December 6th. It premiered in 2002, and I was hooked from the start. It got a final ending. It lasted 6 seasons. 6 seasons in a movie! No, really, it did. It was Operation Zero. It was awesome. And in honor of the anniversary of Codename Kids Next Door's premiere, I thought I would talk about the show. There's so much to talk about, and I'm gonna gush so much. So what I thought I was gonna do tonight was talk about 5 awesome things about Codename Kids Next Door. If you're watching this, I'm assuming you're a fan. The premise. Creator Tom Warburton has described Codename Kids Next Door as X-Men for kids, and for those of you who don't know, the show's about a global organization of kids who fight against evil adults. Now, some people misunderstand the show as a show that's teaching kids to hate their parents or hate adults. That's really not what it is. The premise is appealing to the inner rebel, but it's also lighthearted enough that you really don't take it all that seriously. It's not a mean-spirited show. Granted, the show never suffered from this problem, thank God, because it is a ton of fun. A lot of the fun comes from it does appeal to your inner rebel. It's very much a kids' empowerment kind of show, but you get the imagination and the good parts of childhood that come with it. And it's appealing to see what they can make, what they're fighting against. And when you're a kid, that's a lot of the stuff that kids would fight against. You have... One of my favorites is some of these crazy suburban parents that you see in Operation Chad, where the villains are freezing everyone in the organization except for their son, so everyone can see how great he is. God, that exists way too much in the real world. And it really feels big. The premise feels big and important and fun and energized and everything you would want in a good kid's show. So it's a lot of fun that way. It's a good way to feel like you're rebelling, but you're still doing it in this fun, creative, imaginative way that satirizes aspects of childhood and day-to-day life. It's one of the earliest series, if not the earliest, to establish continuity and overarching plots. Now, throughout most of animation, cartoons were really just funny characters in funny situations, and it was much more about the jokes rather than character development and a bigger story. Bigger stories were much more done in movies or books. But Codename Kids Next Door established a continuity as early as 2004 with the end of its 2nd season, beginning with Operation End. One of the characters who we know as a good guy suddenly switches sides, and he stays that way. And that's established early on. They have a couple instances of that. It's not to the extent of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but it does predate Avatar: The Last Airbender in continuity by 6 months to about a year. They established continuity in about 2004, whereas Avatar: The Last Airbender premiered in 2005. So I would say Codename Kids Next Door really established that. This is before Marvel was doing it. This is before it was done in movies. This was before cinematic universes. Lord of the Rings, having 3 parts, was coming out around this time. So this was a shift in storytelling. And Codename Kids Next Door was at the forefront of that, which I think is really, really cool to see. Because it made you want to see where it was going. Granted, I'm somebody who likes a mix of episodic and serialized shows. I do like it when it's episodic, but I do love when there's also something bigger going on too. And that's something you see a lot more nowadays. So they were really a trendsetter in that area. It's diversity. And I don't just mean racially. Now, Codename Kids Next Door was really open about the fact that all the 5 main characters had different backgrounds and different nationalities. Honestly, that was awesome. It never once defined who they were as characters. Number 5 wasn't just the black one. Number 1 wasn't just the British one. They weren't stereotypes. They were characters first. And what I also mean in terms of diversity is that they all had different personalities. They had personality diversity in there. They weren't just the same person in 5 different bodies. You had number 4 who was more impulsive and more action-oriented. You had number 2 who's a nerd who told bad jokes. You had number 3 who was this really cutesy, sweet person who had a dark side. And you got to have that different point of view in there, so if you like more of the cutesy stuff, you could follow number 3, but you could probably skip number 2's episodes, maybe if you're not so into the detective stories. I felt that they all had very distinct kinds of stories, and they all got their own episodes once in a while, a couple times. So they all got a chance to be a team and be individual characters. They got their individual episodes. So that way, they all got a chance to be in the spotlight. They all had a chance to be the action hero. They all had a chance to be the leader and the star of their own story, which is really fantastic to see. I really don't know how much this means coming from a white person, but it's really nice to have a show with this wide variety of nationalities and personalities and not once have to come out and say, strong female character, empowerment, or look at our minority representation, because they had a good show with good characters. Now, I will admit, it had some stereotypical moments. There probably would be things that are done differently today. But the fact that they all got to be the star once in a while, and they all respected the hell out of each other, and they all had their different roles on the team that were equally important, is a wonderful thing to see. And that's really appreciated. Codename Kids Next Door has achieved what a lot of shows even today still struggle with. Creator Tom Warburton is so good to his fans. Maybe you're friends with him on Facebook. Maybe you've emailed him. Maybe you've checked out his blog, messaged him on Twitter. Chances are he's responded at some point. Now, of course, the creator's busy and can't get to everybody. But Tom Warburton is so active with the fan community. And I am struggling now to say Tom Warburton instead of Mr. Warburton, because that's how he's credited and that's how I knew him as a little kid. It's kind of weird because it's like calling your first grade teacher by her first name even though you're an adult. So, no, I am struggling with that a bit. I got some stories to tell on that. Now, I met Mr. Warburton the first time as a little kid. I was obsessed with the show, would not shut up about it, and my parents helped me reach out to him. I wasn't expecting anything, but he did respond, and I got to have a tour of the studio. January 2004, and I got this hat. I've had this hat since I was a little kid. And what I used to do is I would email him every single week when the new episode aired and told him my thoughts on it. So kind of like what I'm doing now, but showrunner stalking instead of annoying you on YouTube. I emailed him again in college asking him about the career. Oh, I actually have that. I know. I still have my notes from college where I emailed Mr. Warburton and asked him about his career trajectory and how Codename Kids Next Door was made and put together. He gave me his time, and so many times, by the way, and for that I'm endlessly grateful. Look, these are... See, I don't know if you can read that, but these are pages and pages of notes for this project that I did in college. And I actually met Mr. Warburton again earlier this year at a screening for Muppet Babies. I showed him this picture of when I went to the studio back in 2004 as a little kid, and then took another picture. Might have shown everybody on his staff this. Worth it. but he is somebody who has been such a wonderful person as well as a wonderful artist. And that really shows in the show how much these characters love each other, how much fun it was. It really showed that there was a strong leader behind it. So thank you, Mr. Warburton. Thank you so much for everything you've done for me as a fan and for the fan community over these years. You are awesome. And none of us are going to forget that. And the number one thing that's awesome about Codename Kids Next Door? The friendship of the main characters. Now, we know they're great as individual characters. We know they have lives and interests outside of the group. We know they have flaws. We know they have nationalities that don't define them. We know they have different personalities. And they feel like they like each other 100% of the time. They're constantly there for each other. They're rescuing each other from bad guys. They're constantly proving themselves to their friends. They're constantly valuing their friends. They go through things they don't want to do just because they like their friend, and they respect each other. They respect what each other does, even if it's different. And that doesn't mean they don't fight or anything. They do. They do fight. They do argue. They do get on each other's nerves. They do get jealous of each other. But the love always comes through. And there's the respect that comes through. They respect each other. They're never belittling each other. They're never talking down to each other. They call each other out on their flaws, and they help each other grow as characters and as people. I have seen a lot of shows that really hype up how the main characters are best friends forever, and yet they're constantly insulting each other or backstabbing each other, talking down to each other. And you don't feel that love. It bothers me so much, especially when I see that in kid shows. Tween shows are really bad about this. Sitcoms have gotten criticized for this. So Codename Kids Next Door, with all the love, all the passion, all this heart, that is this show. This show is about these wonderful characters and how they relate to each other, how they're there for each other, how they're facing the world together. You know, they may not be together in high school or when they get decommissioned, who knows, but they're here for now, and they're here. They all love the organization. They all love what they do. They love each other. They don't always get what the other one likes, but they're so passionate, and they're so understanding. And it's wonderful.